All right. And Rob or Seth, as co-hosts, you can like click up on the number of participants button on the bottom there. And if anybody else pops on, can you admit them for me?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, everyone. Happy Friday. And instead of doing that small group thing this time, there's a lot to cover on finance, and I know finance is our is everybody's strongest section. So I thought we'd just spend more time on direct finance with the forms I gave you and the chapter and the quiz and things like that. Give me a thumbs up if that you agree with all that. There you go. Yeah, just do your thumbs. We don't need to do those reactions. If you can't find them, it's easier like this. All right. So I wanted to go over the end of the chapter quiz. There were 10 questions back there at the end of the finance chapter, chapter 2. And I want to make it easy for you. I know it's a big class and sometimes people don't want to necessarily speak up, but if there was a question that at the end of the chapter that you didn't understand or you got wrong, you don't know why don't you type that in the chat, and then I'll take those and review those end of chapter ones. Or you can speak up, either way.
I guess I'll speak up. I definitely struggle a little bit with the last question, just trying to figure out, like, I figured out how they got the money, the cost. I think the question was, given the following information, what are the agency's total liabilities? And so I understood where they got the money. I just was trying to figure out, so the fixed asset and the equities is total liabilities.
Right. Think of it this way. When you do a balance sheet, you want to know your net worth, right? So you got all your assets, you got the money or the cash, the liquid stuff, and you got your grounds, your buildings, your facilities, the equipment that you've already purchased. All that is sort of your fixed assets. So then against that, in order to find your net worth, you got those assets, both liquid and fixed. And then you have also your liabilities, which is the money you owe, be it salaries, bills, things like that. Once you subtract the money you owe from your fixed asset, from all your assets, you still have a lot, you should have a lump of money, right? That's your equity. That's what you're worth. That's your net worth, so to say. Okay. So your assets, both liquid and fixed, is going to equal your liabilities and your equity. All right. Because after the liabilities are taken care of, you still are going to own this land. You're still going to own that equipment. You're still going to own, or you're still going to have that cash on hand. So that's why the basic equation is assets, complete assets equal liability plus equity, or complete assets minus equity, minus liabilities equals your equity or your net worth. Okay. That's about as well as I can explain it. Are you following along with that, Andrew?
Yeah, I ended up getting it together on my own, and I guess I was looking for more of I read in the chapter. I was just trying to get like a better understanding of it, I guess.
Yeah, so it's
Thank you.
A equals L plus E. If you really want to shorten it, it's AL, ALE. Think about having a beverage and it's just ale. Anyone else? I don't see anything in the chat. You guys were all good, got 100, everything's good. Should we just skip this chapter and just move on?
I didn't get 100, but I figured out my error.
Well, Rob, what was the one you did first get wrong?
I got confused with the mills, to be quite honest with you. And then going back through it again helped reaffirm what my understanding.
Okay. Actually, let me share. All right, everybody see that? I'm also working with one computer here. It makes it a little harder. So a mill, 1,000 mills is a buck. Okay, that's the ratio. All right, and that's standard across the country. So your mill rate times taxable property value divided by 100 equals property tax. All right, so if the mill rate is 7, that means for every $1,000 of assessed value, $7 is owed. All right. So if they have a taxable value of 150,000, then the property tax bill is 7 times 150,000, which gives you one. I forget the big number it is, but it gives you that large number that's over 1 million, I believe. And then when you divide it by 1,000, it comes out to 1,050. The other way to do it, and it's the same difference, is you can divide that mill rate by 1,000. Okay. If the mill rate was 7, you divide it by 1,000, you get 0.007. And then you times that by the 150,000 and you get the same number. All right. It really doesn't matter where you put that division. It's going to generate that same number. You could even divide the value of the house by 1,000 and then times it by the mill rate and come up with the same number. That's the beauty of when you have addition, when you have just multiplication and division together. Clear as mud? All right, but I do have this sheet. It's posted. I posted a lot of sheets on the Google Drive this morning. So this sheet will be up there for you. So this is a nice quick one. Stop share for a minute. Go back to the chat. Anybody else have?
Dan,
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Dan. I do have a question. It's not directly, my name is Bill. I wasn't here
Yeah, hi,
last
Bill.
week. Sorry. Hi. I wasn't, the question I have, isn't, I don't think it's on one of the questions on the test or on the practice test, but it's around developing the budget and this whole idea of cost recovery. And so we are in this situation where we either break even or we are subsidizing our programs. We're mandated, not to make a profit, quote unquote. But and so I haven't been doing this calculation previously, so this is kind of new to me. But is this basically saying, like, if a program costs, let's say $100, but it costs me, $150 to run it, so I'm kind of subsidizing. I need to figure out whether that $50 is from, my funds or from revenue from like ticket sales or another program within my department. Is that kind of the idea around cost recovery? So I should be calculating that number because I have not been last year.
Yeah. Subsidy is an integral part of cost recovery. Okay. If you want the program to pay for itself, then you're just looking, and you're a nonprofit, then you're just looking at the break-even point, right? Where does your total cost equal to your total revenue? That's your break-even point, okay? However, usually for recreation departments or public service departments, the more it benefits the total community, the more you're going to consider subsidizing the cost of that. Like, you don't charge entrance fees to your local parks, right? So whatever you spend on that local park to maintain it, to keep it up, to improve it, you're subsidizing all those expenses by 100%, right? And you got to find money somewhere else. Your other programs, the more specific they get, you should be subsidizing them less, right? So if you're in, like, if you find, my favorite is a cooking class. Your subsidy may be very small on that or non-existent. Matter of fact, you may be trying to make a profit on that, because in the overall picture of things, that may help you pay for the park. Right? So you can still be a nonprofit organization and have that mandate of running without a profit, but still make individual profits on different programs to help subsidize the larger good. So I know I'm confusing you a little bit, and did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was actually, the last part was actually really helpful. So if we make a profit, and we are starting a cooking class, such a great example, and I can see from the fees, we'll probably bring in revenue. And so the way I need to figure out how to report it, from what you were saying, is not saying we made a profit. Well, we did from the program, but then it itself will subsidize, let's say, the playgrounds, like you said, right? They're open, there's no cost. So in my budgeting, I have to figure that out. Like, this program revenue, or this, revenue and profits actually helps us subsidize, or recover the cost of the parks. Because,
Right.
yeah, that's helpful. We're getting some pushback from some council members, that we can't make a profit at all. But I didn't know a way to explain it to them. Like, the
Yeah.
cooking class will make a profit, but it will go back into another program.
Yeah, it might help fund kids basketball, something that's got this general good for the community, keeping kids off the streets, stuff, youth services, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's a
We
good
here
point.
at PRPS, we're a nonprofit, but I'll tell you, this class makes us a little money, but it helps offset the cost to do our advocacy work on behalf of everyone, okay, for Parks and Recreation. And it helps with other various things that we do here at it. But overall, we're a nonprofit. We really don't make money, but we got to have our salaries paid and all those other things.
So Dan, for the test that we take on this, do you have to memorize these formulas, or do they give you a lot of math equations to do?
You should be aware of break even
Break even.
and being able to apply a subsidy. Okay. And we'll review that a little more today. And you will need to know ALE.
But you mentioned needing a calculator. Is this one of the reasons?
Yeah, but you'll notice that in the book, the questions with the money involved they weren't that difficult as far as the numbers go. They're not going to give you a weird number. It'll be, tens and fives, ending in tens and fives. So it's not going to really it's more about, and I think we said this last week, depending whether you work through the entire equation or not. Oh no, I said this to the other group. You'll have a couple of answers that will match the typical wrong answers you'll get if you don't do the thing correctly. So all those answers will, 3 of them or 2 of them might be involved if you do it the wrong way. And so you have to really, know ALE, know what's involved in a break even, and the subsidy is really kind of easy. It's just, think of the subsidies like a sale percentage. If you're subsidizing something 10%, it just means it's like a sale price for the person or whoever's signing up of 10%. All right. Any other questions? The financial statements. Real quick, the income statement is a reporting of the whole year, of that year to that point. You may get monthly statements, you may get quarterly statements, maybe semi-annual statements, all right? It's where you're at as far as, okay, here's what we budgeted for your expenses, here's where you are so far, here's the percentage of budget that you've used. And then your income would be the same thing. Here's what we budgeted, here's where you are, and how many of you are familiar with these? They're called budget sheets sometimes, but mostly they're called income statements. You guys see them in your department? Yeah. Okay. That's the one we all should be familiar with. That's your working one. The other one, the cash flow statement. Not so much when you have if you're working for a municipal government where your budget it's all combined, you're combined with the health department and police department. They're not worried too much about cash flow. But if you were like a nonprofit and you were like a golf course or something, it'd be very important to know when that money's coming in and how much you will have to save to pay the people in December, you know? So it's very important to know what your cash flow is at any given time, because some of your expenses will be year round, but some of most of your income, if you're a golf course or a swimming pool, most of your income is going to be in the summer, right? But you still got to pay the pool manager or the director year round. So you have to know how much cash is in the bank and can you do that? So that's what a cash flow is. It looks at your monthly cash flow and tells you how much you have at any given point, and it helps you plan. And a balance sheet, that's the ale. Okay. That's like, think of it as a photograph of where you are at one point in time. On this date, here's all your assets. Here's your liabilities. You subtract your liabilities from your assets, that's your equity. Okay, so that's sort of a snapshot of where you are on a given date. You guys good with those three? We got snapshot, we got the usual, and we have the cash flow. So just, if you can be as familiar with those as I just explained it to you, you'll be fine. Okay. I'm looking at these questions. So grants. They're usually one-shot deals. All right. You're not going to get a grant that's going to fund your, boys basketball program for 16 years. Okay, that's on you. Grants are usually one-shot deals that, you're going to build a park, you're going to build a trail, you're going to build a facility, you're going to make improvements, you're going to put in a piece of playground equipment. Those big one-shot purposes are usually associated with grants. Okay. Biggest reason grants fail, deadlines and guidelines I have, and it's also bad communication. If you can't write it and you can't write it well, it's number one reason. I was a grant reviewer for the EPA. They were doing some education program grants, and I got saddled with like 200 grants to review. The first thing I checked were all the pieces there. And I was able to. I had to reject almost half of the grants because all the pieces weren't there. Or they weren't turned in on time. So as a reviewer, that was an easy step for me to take, because I was able to eliminate almost half of my grants, and I had a very valid reason for doing so. Either all the parts weren't there, or the deadlines weren't met. So those are like the biggest reasons a grant could get rejected. And think of it from the reviewer's standpoint. My job became a lot easier with 100 rather than 200 to review. And I didn't have to like call people up and get new, the missing pieces and things like that. So so grants, big projects, one-time projects, and communication or deadlines and guidelines, missing deadlines or guidelines are the two big reasons. And Lance, I know you get a lot, you've done a lot with grants. Can you back me up on this one? He's trying to unmute.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. Sorry about that. Yes,
That's okay.
definitely. You know, our department writes grants not only for our department, but also for municipalities in the county. So we submit quite a few a year. And biggest thing they tell us is, you know, make sure you're crossing those T's and dotting those I's. They don't want 50 support letters. They want to make sure that questions are answered properly and in the way they want them. So it's very important.
Okay, thank you.
Getting the money is easier. It's making sure the project's complete too. So make sure.
Yeah. Well, no,
Sometimes-
tell me more about that. What are you saying there?
Sometimes it is. I'll put it that way. So when you think a project's gonna be easy and it's gonna be in and out, we're still working on a bathroom project we had 2 or 3 years ago. So you know it doesn't always go as planned.
Yeah, you always have to allot a lot of time to make sure that they get done.
Right. Just a quick question, Dan, on
Sure.
the math questions. Are they gonna have, you know how they have the sample budget statements or the cash flow statements? Are they gonna have those in there and try to figure out which numbers where, or is it just more the questions are at the end, like pick A, B, C, or D?
It's more of the questions at the end.
Okay.
But you know what they
Curious.
will do? I can guarantee you on that last page, page 42, when they talk about cost centers and they give that definition, that chart with classification, object, line item, cost center, okay? You're gonna need to know what's what. Okay, so the big top line is always the classification. The second line would be talking about something under that classification, a big part. And then the ones under that, administration and sports, are cost centers. I've never seen a question with the subordinate ones in it. But it might show you this top and then ask you, what is administration in this budget outline? And then it'll have A, B, C, D, you know, classification, object line, or cost center. And then D would be some kind of red herring or something like that. That will be a question on that exam.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
can almost guarantee it. Let's see. Petty cash. There will be a question on petty cash. Know your petty cash. Okay. It's not for travel expenses. Travel expenses are, you get your receipts and you turn them in. Okay. It's only for those real quick according to NRPA. It's only for those real quick purchases. Okay, like the basketball net, I think is the one they said. And you know, one person, you know, they have all this listing of how it gets managed. Just be familiar with the list. Don't memorize it. It's not like you need to know, like you need to have that committed. With that list, just be able to figure out which ones among 4 answers, which one that isn't in there. You know, you can't go out and pay for everybody with a credit card and then submit it to petty cash, or you can't just take money from petty cash and buy things. You need to turn in the receipt, those types of things. All right. That's enough for the book. Let's review that break-even sheet, huh? Gotta share. There it is. All right, a break even occurs when the cost equals the money collected. Subsidies are discounts you apply to a program. They represent the cost of the agency is willing to incur because of the value of the program to the community. It works like a discount. All right, number 1, you have a goal of 10 participants for an intimate 5-session cooking class. Here are the costs associated with the class. All right, so the chef is, somebody give me the answer. Is he or she a variable, or are they a variable, a direct or indirect or changing fixed cost?
Direct.
They are a direct. They could also be which one? Let's say I had the
Indirect?
class, say, what?
Would it be indirect or no?
No,
Variable.
they,
Variable.
nope.
No, last changing.
Changing.
All right. How could they be a changing fixed cost?
Well, suppose they only wanted 10 participants and it shoots up to 20? Would they charge more?
They have to hire another chef,
Right, right.
okay? So it's a fixed cost. It's $500 per chef. But it may change if numbers go up. Think of a bus trip. Okay. I used to run buses when I was working in Jersey. We would run buses to Atlantic City. You know, that was some people's recreation. But if I got a lot of people, I'd get another bus. So my fixed cost went up because the bus was a bus, right? Everybody understand that? So it is a fixed cost, and it's a direct fixed cost, but it could change. The kitchen rental. All right, I'm just going to give them to you. What's that? It's the same, but it's probably going to be the fixed cost, right? Participant aprons. Come on, somebody.
Indirect.
Changing?
Oh, all right. The participant aprons.
It's variable, right?
Yeah, it's variable.
Variable.
Oh,
I'm going to make this easy on you guys because I don't want to. I'm going to ask you though, why is it variable, Don? Why is it variable?
Because it depends on how many participants.
Yep. If I have 20 people, I need 20 aprons, right? So my cost is 200. If I only have 5, I only need 5 aprons. My cost is $50. So that's variable. It varies with the number of participants. Same with food and supplies. Okay. I may only need 5 turkeys, or I may need 20 turkeys, depending on what I do. The program manager, that's the guy who, or the person that designs the course, takes the registration, finds the chefs and hires them and puts it all together and takes care of all the correspondence. That's an indirect cost. That program manager would have a job no matter what they did, what programs they put together, okay? It's their job to manage programs, not just the program. So that's an indirect fixed cost. That person has a job no matter what. Okay. However, we should charge some of that program manager's time back to this course. If you want to really get an idea how much this program is costing you, right? That would be fair, but it's an indirect fixed cost. And any kind of overhead, whether it's the supervisor, the administrator, you know, the person who doesn't do anything, right, except sit in the office and look important and stuff like that. That's my apologies to any administrators out there. But that's an indirect fixed cost. The lights, the heat. If this was being done in one of your facilities, that's indirect fixed cost. Is everybody clear on that? Variable varies. The changing fixed, you know, you probably won't get any question on that, but please be aware of that. If you need an extra bus, that's a changing fixed cost. Okay. So it's sort of like a chunk cost, you know, boom, 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 big chunks. And aprons, and of course the program manager and anybody who works for the department that's not directly involved in making the money for the department, that would be an indirect fixed cost. All right, so to get into this, Bill, this break even point, this is probably the hardest stuff for the chapter. Break even And if you read that top line with me, I'll explain it out. Break even equals the fixed cost plus the variable cost times the number of participants. All that divided by the number of participants. All right. So for this program, the break-even point was the $500 for the chef, the $100 for the kitchen, and then I think it was what, 125 for the aprons. What was that?
Program manager.
Yeah, the 125 plus the 100, plus the 10 times the 40, which is the aprons and the food. Okay. And because we're doing this for 10 people, we're planning this program for 10 people. All right. So that's the number we're going to use. If we get 15, it's all gravy, right? And that's good for us. But we need to make sure that we get our 10. So we're going to figure out the break-even cost for the 10. And this is what it would look like. So you add those all together. Of course, you do inside the parentheses first. All right. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And then you go through and add, you'll get $1,225 divided by 10, which gives you $122.50 per person to cover the program cost or to break even with 10 people. You guys see all that? And I know some of you may not include these things in your calculations, and that's fine, but I would encourage you to be aware of it and maybe start thinking about including them, because they are costs for your organization. And, and that will lead to some, being able to subsidize other programs if you accurately or try to accurately assess what your costs are.
So my question with that, with putting those in is like program manager, right? You have 125. Is that for an hour, or is that just, oh, they worked on it for 3 hours? They're going to be working on this for 3 hours. So that's
We have a
that's
flat
their
rate. We have a rate in our organization for time spent on a project. Okay. And so I'll guesstimate how many hours it's going to take me to do what I need to do, and then times that by 100. Again, it's a budget. It's your best estimate of what it's going to cost. Some people will just also do it like a flat line, saying, okay, we have 40 programs. We're going to divide this person's salary by 40 and apply an equal amount to each program. So you can do it either way. It's your budget. You can figure it all out yourself. In our organization, we do sort of hourly rates to figure out how much we are. So I don't know where this organization got these numbers from, but they could have done it either way. Great question, though. Thank you. And if they only decided to use direct program costs, okay, then they would take away these two costs. All right, because they are indirect, but they would use the direct fixed and the variable costs. Okay, because if you didn't have the program, you wouldn't have this cost. The chef, excuse me, I'll put an X here too. The chef and the kitchen rental, you wouldn't have those costs if you didn't run the program. So they're direct costs. And so you got the chef and kitchen rental plus food plus apron times 10. You go to 1,000 times 10. And so your answer is going to be $100 instead of $122.50. Okay. So you're shorting yourself $22.50 per person. Times that by 10, it's $225. That's that can be a little chunk of change for some of our programs. All right. If they wanted to subsidize the full cost of this program by 20%, so the subsidy, again, 20% is like a 20% discount. Okay. So this equation right here the price would equal the price times 1 minus S. All right. That's a little confusing. All right. But what it's saying is you convert 20% to a decimal, which is 0.2. Okay, 20% of 100 is 20. 20% of 1 is 0.2. Like 2 dimes are 20% of a full dollar. So the new price is 1 minus the subsidy, or 1 minus 0.2, or 122 minus 8. Okay, which is 1 minus 0.2. Did everybody see that? So you go into a store and something's 20% off. How do you figure that out? There's two ways to, for me, there's two ways to do it. I figure out what 10% is. I double it and then I subtract it from the price to get an idea of what it is, right? What I'm effectively doing is I'm multiplying it by 0.8, right? But there's two ways to, the other way, you know, when you're working on like doing a tip of 20%, or, you know, at a restaurant, right? You try to figure out first, if they don't give it to you on the receipt, what 20% is. First thing you have to do is like say, okay, what's 10%? And then I'll double it, and that's 20% tip. How many are familiar with doing it that way? Yeah. We're just doing it the more mathematical way here. All right. You could also do that here. All right. If the cost is $122.50, 10% is what? $12.25. You double that. And it's 25 bucks, and it gives you about $98. So you get to the same place. All right. But the correct formula is P minus 1, P times 1 minus S. All right. So the subsidy, you just have to convert it to a decimal. So 20% is 0.2, 30% 0.3, 80% is 0.8. Okay. Subtract 1, which would be the full price, is 1, and minus that decimal. Which brings us to the end. How many of you did this, by the way, or attempted? Yeah. Haverford, I didn't see if did you guys attempt this? All right. Anyone want to answer in the chat what the first one is? Go ahead, answer in the chat. If 100% subsidy, what's the cost for the group?
Wait,
All right. Coventry, Kelly, Steve, good job. All right, give yourself stars. 100% subsidy, it's going to be free. All right, because you're subsidizing the whole program, or 100% of it. And if you use that calculation I gave you, P equals P times 1 minus the subsidy. 100% is 1, so 1 minus 1 is 0, right? And any number times 0 is 0. So that equation worked for you, okay? The junior hockey team is subsidized at 50%. What's the cost for them? In the chat, let's see it. Bob, very good. Bob, very good. I got to see the rest. 20, 20, 20. Ooh, we're on a roll now. Everybody sees. Well, 50% is easy to figure out, right? So subsidy is discount. Subsidy is discount.
oh,
All right. Now we have a birthday party, and they don't want to subsidize it that much, but it is kids. So, you know, we'll do a little bit. So we're going to do 10%. What's the cost for them? $36, right? 10%. 10% of $40 is $4, right? Because 4 times 10 is 40. So we just subtract 4% off because the subsidy is 10% or $4 off, and it becomes 36. All right, very good. And now we have an ice skating school. We want to make a profit on these guys. We want to make a profit of 10%. All right. So the subsidy what do we got? $44 is it? 44 is the winner. All right. And this hockey team, the men's hockey league, we want to make that. Well, if 10% is $4 and 20% over costs or 20% profit will give you 48, right? Following through. It's as easy as that, guys. All right. And as I said before, these questions that you'll get on the exam, they're not going to test your, it won't be a test of your math skills. It'll be in whole numbers, in round numbers, 5s and 10s. All right. The answer, like the 122.50, might be a little different after the calcs are done, but they're going to start with those whole round numbers. Okay. Everybody getting the hang of it a little bit? Good. Yeah, just if you could refer back to, how you calculate a sale item or a tip on a restaurant bill, things like that, and just equate it to that, or you'll do fine. All right. And knowing the definition of subsidy will also help. Which brings us to the other part. How do we did anybody do this one? No? You guys want to go over it? Steve, fortunately, Steve, I can see your head shaking.
That's all right. I muted it so you couldn't hear it.
DJ, you want to go over this? He's all right. Let's see. We got 45. I'm thinking, did anyone do it yet or attempt it yet? Julian Sawyer did. All right. I'm going to hold on this one just because I do want you guys to go through this. It's all about the definitions, some that we went through today. I do want you to try it. We'll check it first thing next week. The answer key actually is up on the Google Drive now if you wanted to peek ahead. But I would suggest you go through it with your book. Really try to match it up yourself first and then check your answers. And then we can talk a little bit about it next week when we all get there. Because this one's it's a good way to learn the definitions that are in the chapter. Or words you're going to need to be familiar with. Okay. So I really want you to do it. I don't want to just review it. I think it would be worth your while. Which brings me to another point I wanted to get through that I know I forgot. I neglected our first week is this book. It's a good book. I mean, it's a good sleep aid. I will give you that. But there's a lot of good material in here, and a lot of good stuff that you're going to come across and say, oh, I can use that. So, as you use the book, think of it as a resource for you also. If you have questions about things or you want to, other chapters have, different diagrams and forms to share that could really be useful for you. So, it's really worth your time to read the book and use it. I'm hoping you're reading it and using it as a study guide because it'll really help you going forward. All right. I do have one other thing. All right. I am gonna put the video down, but I am gonna leave the chat up. All right. We got about a 9-question quiz here on chapters 1 and 2. Go ahead. You think you know the answer? Type it in. Partnerships that fail most likely do so for what reason?
I don't know what we're looking at.
I still see the break even sheet.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That would have been confusing. There we go. Everybody see that now?
Yep. Okay.
All right. All right, you can enter your answer in chat. All right. See a lot of A's coming through, and the A's are absolutely correct. Partnerships that fail most likely do so for what reason? A lack of communication. Okay. Next. Parks and Rec in 2 neighboring communities decide to run a series of holiday events together. They share authority and decision-making, which are outlined in a written agreement. The agencies formed what type of relationship? Remember that CAP. All right, we're going to have to review CAP. All right. It's got a written agreement. It's got a written agreement, but it's not a separate agency. Will somebody type in A, please? Oh, Steve, you got it right. A. All right. It's an alliance. All right. Remember we said CAB. Collaboration is when 2 agencies get together, talk things through, and then do their own thing. An alliance, they have a written agreement of how things are going to happen and what's going to happen. A partnership is when 2 agencies get together and actually form a third organization to run whatever the thing is, or form a new partnership. So it's CAB as far as the amount of integration. So collaboration is no written agreement. An alliance has a written agreement, and a partnership is a new organization. Okay. Thank you now for all answering A. That's great. You guys did wonderful. Gifts, sponsorships, and planned giving are examples of what type of income? All right, the A's have it, and the A's are right. It's gratuitous. All right, you're not expecting it, it just happens. Okay. It's not something you're earning, it's not part of a contract, and it's not taxes, which are compulsory. Your public agency wants to apply for a grant to build a bike trail. The grant is open to only nonprofits. The best way to go about applying for this grant? A, apply since you're a nonprofit, form a 501c3 friends group and apply through it. Look for other grants that are not restricted. Have volunteers apply and give the agency the money as a donation. B is the correct answer. Although C would be a viable option. Remember, we're going for the best answer, and this is what they're fishing for, is to form the 501c3. Number 20, making your park and rec agency the beneficiary of a life insurance policy is illegal. it's a tax write-off, considered a planned gift, consider a postmortem donation. All right. It's a planned gift. C's, the C's have it. Very good, guys. We're doing well. All right, here's your math. What is the break-even cost of a program that has 500 in fixed costs and 700 total in variable cost? And we'll have a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 25. The 700 is the total. It's not per person. $1,200 divided by 20 would give you D, 60. Okay. This is a terrible question because we just talked about variable costs as they're a per person. I had to read this question a couple of times to figure out how they got to D as the correct answer. But it said that has 500 in fixed costs, 700 in variable costs. The only way the question makes sense to me is that if it's 700 in total variable costs, which to me would skirt the definition of fixed costs, but that's the way the question is. I can't say that all the questions are wonderful and absolutely on the ball. Some of them are kind of silly. All right, this one we had last week. I want to make sure I'm testing your memory here. Where are we going with this one? All right. All right, how many got A on this one? All right, the A's have it. All right. Remember, all the same positions on the same line. Okay. So the director of maintenance needs to come down one to be with the other director. And the other two directors and the two coordinators need to come down one to be on a different line. Okay, this is typical of that question I told you that you would get here. What is 1,000 services personnel considered? Steve, you're covering your bases, huh? All right, that's good.
That was from the other one. I messed up and reset it. Sorry.
Yeah, D is budget classification. It's budget classification. Okay. All right, that's it. I'll stop my share. So those are some of the questions. Those are right off of the end of chapter review and the end test in the 5th edition book. So those are some that are in those practice exams. The feedback I've gotten from a lot of people is you won't see many of those practice questions on the exam. You'll see a few, but not many of them. However, the format of the questions, A, B, C, D, it's looking for you got to look for keywords. You can eliminate 2, all those things. And you need to know the definitions as NRPA states them. They will all factor into those questions. So those are what's going to be similar to the questions you get on your exam. So knowing the material is going to be very helpful for you. I'd encourage you to do that matching exercise or go on the Quizlet app and do that also. I am open. I see, I can't even see what time it is here. We got like 2 minutes left. I'm open for any questions or answers. Next week is also exciting week. We got HR, Human Resources. Again, it's only 10% of the exam. So I'll do a lot more with finance, and human resources makes up 20% of the exam. So I'll do more with both subjects next week to try to cement everything in for you guys. Otherwise, I'm open to questions right now. Anything else going forward?
Dan, after the meeting, can you stay on for a minute? I had something that doesn't pertain to that, to this.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Oh, let me follow up. Give me a thumb if you've gotten contacted from NRPA yet. DJ, you haven't yet? And Andrew, no? All right, okay. All right, DJ, I'll see what's going on there. All right. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. I have sun here, so that's gonna be a change for the better today. And I think we're gonna break 20 degrees, so I'm looking forward to that. Everybody else, please stay warm, and I'll post something either late today or by Monday for next week, but you can assume you're supposed to read the chapter and do the test questions at the end if you want to get started. So don't let me stop you from doing that. But I'll fill out the Google Drive. Has everybody gotten on the Google Drive, by the way? If you haven't accessed it yet, at least try to access it so I know everything's cool with it. All right, great. All right, guys, have a good weekend, and I'll see you soon. I'll stay on if any more questions or anyone else needs to talk a little bit.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay on the line.